Hello and welcome back to Council Watch. And I've been away doing pantomime and returned to full council. So that's another pantomime. In actual fact, it's a little bit different, to be honest. This full council meeting was a bit sort of packed and so ran at a sort of tremendous pace. But a few new things on the horizon. New things in the form of Councillor Keith Patience. A councillor I've not come across before, I don't think. Or if I have, I must completely missed him. But anyway, Councillor Patience was there. He was also sitting right at the other end of the room, so on the web stream you couldn't actually see him. So I had a quick look, and this is the blog that we've got actually up on the council website. And I have to say, that's probably one of the worst pictures I've seen. There's a much nicer picture of him on here. So that's it. That's a far more human person. He's a very busy chap. He's a member of Lowestoft Town Council. He's also on East Suffolk Council, and he's actually on Suffolk County Council as well, which means presumably he's spread a little thin. Maybe that's why I've not sort of come across him before. I don't know. However, he's not wearing just two hats, he's wearing three. And this causes a bit of amusement later on in the video. I have to say, Councillor Patience is very knowledgeable on committee meetings. He knows the rules very, very well. And he's actually managed to sort of get his knowledge of the rules sort of put into play in this meeting, which was interesting to see. It was a little bit uncontrolled, I have to say, this meeting. But it did seem to have a very serious sort of side to it. I'll explain. For those of you who know Lowestoft well over the years, we've got a block of flats, top of the town, whacking great big block of flats, St Peter's Court. And it's always been a slightly contentious place for people to live. It seemed to be, over the years, split into two distinct groups. There were more older people who actually loved the fact that the views from the windows were amazing. Certainly the people on the eastern side had a brilliant view out to sea. In a previous life, I used to actually visit the place quite often with television sets and things like that. And there were quite a lot of older folk there. And it was pretty basic, but the people really looked after some of the accommodation they had in there, and it was quite a nice place, I found. Equally, there were a number of families in there who were, how should we say, less pleasant to get on with. And although I was taking television sets into St Peter's Court for some families, let's just say I was removing them from others. That's sort of, when I was very, very young. And St Peter's Court suffers the usual thing with any block of flats, where access to everybody really is via the lifts. And it was never particularly pleasant going up and down in the lifts. You never quite knew who was going to get in, who was going to get out and things like that. But St Peter's Court did the job. And it was, from what I remember, pretty well fully occupied. Now, over the years, of course, blocks of flats tended to get a bit worse reputation. Lots of people moved out. Grenfell Tower in West London, I'm sure most people remember, caught fire. I think a total of 72 people died in it, and over 200 were injured. Now, Grenfell Tower was built in the same era, bar a couple of years, to St Peter's Court in Lowestoft. St Peter's Court was slightly smaller. I think St Peter's Court, it's about 90 apartments, and I think it's about 120 in Grenfell Tower. Basic design features, very similar. And after Grenfell, there was a lot of concern about high-rises all over the country. R1 did have some tarting up a few years back, but realistically, most of it was still 1960 style construction. Now, it was decided by Suffolk Council that it needed to go. And for some very odd reason, there's been an awful lot of controversy about knocking it down. One thing you've got to bear in mind is that there is a genuine implication to the climate emergency, and Lowestoft Town Council are very keen on that. I mean, personally, I'm not, but I know they are. There is an impact. Now, if you knock down a building like that, demolition-wise, then all the carbon that's in the building escapes into the environment. So that is a bad thing, and a number of people in this meeting spoke about it being bad. What they actually forget is that the locked-in carbon in any building has to escape to the environment at some point. So pretty well every building built will, at the end of its life, release this. So you can't actually say, look, we've got a climate emergency, we can't start knocking things down, because at some point the damn things are going to fall down on their own. And that's clearly hugely dangerous. So the argument about releasing the carbon back into the environment is pointless, because at some time it's going to happen. There's nothing we can do about that. We don't have any magic way to demolish a block of flats in 20 years' time that won't do it. So if we do it now or in 20 years' time, the actual release of carbon, which is what worries people, is inevitable. So it's irrelevant. It's got to happen. Now, the other thing that people seem to have forgotten is that the building was not full occupancy before it was decided to knock it down. Mainly, people don't want to live in the damn things anymore. The figures seem to be nationally that tower blocks as a place to live are becoming less and less popular. When Grenfell came along, and sadly those people died, well, that put off other people from wanting to go and live in them. I mean, I find it a bit hard to believe that any of the people sitting around a table in a council meeting would actually want to volunteer to go and live in a tower block. One of the councillors mentions in the meeting that he's personally read things that says, well, yeah, it's safe. But he's also discovered that it's just got one fire exit route. That apparently is okay. But he said, I don't think that's right. And realistically, I think he's got a point. If you take people who are homeless and bung them in a block of flats that they don't want to be in because they are potentially putting themselves into a building they might not be able to escape from, you're stuck. You've also got the sort of social aspect of things, is that the older people don't want to move to somewhere like St Peter's Court, despite the lovely views from the higher floors. You can't just stick people into any old property just because it's unoccupied. What would be the point of spending lots of money doing St Peter's Court up, making it fire safe? If there's a fire and you live at the top, the first rule is you don't use the lift. So someone's got to go down staircases. That's just not on in a fire, is it? If you've got people who are incapacitated in some way. So let's say, people like me, I'm getting on. I don't walk as well as I used to. I get out of puff. Could I get in a hurry from the top of a St Peter's Court style building to safety quickly if there was a fire? I don't think I could. I mean, I'd have a damn good way of trying, but I don't think even me, who I'm modestly fit, I think I'd going to be struggle to get out of there. If you've got people who are more elderly than me, are they going to be able to do it? They can't move quickly. I reckon that's a serious safety concern. And equally, you've also got people who may not have a lot of money. Now, those people who've not got a lot of money might be tempted to cut corners with heating. I mean, maybe they've got dodgy second-hand heaters that might possibly catch fire. I don't know. I'm making this up. But sticking people who are more than likely more of a fire risk into property seems a bit risky to me. So I reckon we've knocked on the head the thing about carbon. There's no point even considering that. It's going to happen at some point, whether we like it or not. Second thing, we stick people into a building they don't want to live in. That's not really very socially sort of concerning, is it? You haven't got a home, we've got a home for you. Unfortunately, it's in a tower block. But don't worry, because if it catches fire, the fire thing says it's safe. I'd probably beg to differ. I don't think I would want to be in a building where I've got one access to an escape route. And remember, if you live in a tower block, you don't have a back door. you only have one exit from your particular sort of flat out onto the communal stairs and lift area. So if that lift area is on fire, you are stuffed. So realistically, St Peter's Court should be knocked down. What made this meeting a bit different was that there were two members of the public. There was a guy called Robin, who I think back in about 2010 tried to start some sort of political party, Humanity I think it was called, which fizzled out a bit later on. And another chap called Robin, who's something to do with the TUC. And both of these people seem to forget that they have exactly 3 minutes to state their case. So there was far too much waffle, sort of, you don't need to tell people about your family and where you live and what you want to do. Hit them with the facts, because 3 minutes ticks away really, really quickly. They were also right at the back of the room, so nobody could actually see them on the video stream. So this is Robin and this is Richard. And these are the two people you're about to hear speaking.
No. So we have two members of the public here. Would you like to speak? You have 3 minutes each.
It's a strict 3 minutes through the microphone, please. Thank you.
I'm assuming it's on. Is that right?
Yes.
My name's Robin Debray. I've recently moved into...
It is on. It
is on. Yeah.
I'm here to speak to you, not to learn how to use a microphone. My name's Robin Debray. I moved into Lowestoft in December. Previously lived in Kessingland and was a parish councillor there. Shortly before I moved into Lowestoft, I was asked by the Secretary of Waveney Trades Council, I'm a Unite member, to take a look at the proposed demolition of St Peter's Court, and I understand this matter is on your agenda tonight, because he believed that there wasn't sufficient justification for the demolition of that building. So I explored it and discovered that absolutely everything relating to that the decision to demolish was confidential. So I put in a Freedom of Information request, and that was responded to positively with a bunch of documents last Wednesday, which I understand you have had before you because I made them available to one of your clerks. Now, looking at those documents, what I see is first and foremost is that the building is structurally sound, according to that those documents. There's negligible corrosion to the steel framework of the building. Secondly, should the building be demolished and new build take place, environmentally it would be twice as harmful as if the building was refurbished. If the building was refurbished, we're led to believe that it would cost something like 23.4 million to do that. If it's demolished, the income that would have been secured through refurbishment would have been 21 million. So there would have been a loss of 21 million, and therefore the cost of refurbishment, taking into account the fact that that 21 million income would be there, is 2.4 million over a period of 30 years rather. That's around about 80,000 a year. It's around about 880 per flat, 90 flats, and it's less than the cost of looking after my highly disabled daughter. Money's paid by the NHS, the DWP and Derbyshire County Council. So what we're talking about is that building could be saved for less than the cost of looking after my daughter. The East Suffolk Council suggests that there would be a profit of £4 million by year 30 if they new built, but they don't give any hint as to the financials relating to that alleged 4 million profit. In fact, they don't say anything about the new build if it's to be demolished.
That's your 3 minutes.
Any chance of any? No. Not at all.
Sorry, we have to be really strict with time. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, sadly, Robin wasted pretty much all of his 3 minutes. which is a bit of a shame because I think he was just coming on to the bit that he wanted to talk about. But it didn't really do him any good. But some of the councillors knew about it already, I think. Anyway, this is the other member of the public.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Shaw, Secretary of the Waveney TUC. It's been an issue which we discussed at Trades Council about a year ago when we heard about the demolition. But this, I believe, actually was brought about by a contact to the East Suffolk Council when I actually found out 15 flats in St Peter's Court were empty. We had a record housing waiting list. We have costs of temporary accommodation, and yet these are left empty. And it's the case, and maybe these aren't the only ones. I know there are 3 flats in St Mary's Court, which is also a council block in Beccles, which are also empty and have been for 2 or 3 years. The fact is, this is diabolical that people are on the waiting list, and then in fact they're not being housed. The reason, therefore, I contacted the East Suffolk Council, and then not a few weeks after that, a decision was made by East Suffolk Council that, in fact, in recommendation, that it would be demolished. It seems to me that it is a complete no-no that, in fact, that this has taken place early and this decision was before. I think that, in fact, now that, in fact, it's empty, there is a good chance that, in fact, that the renovation could be made to best use of what we've got and made it into more of a community space. But there are many issues involved in the high-rise. And of course, if you went back in 50 years, you probably would now, the decision would be made not actually to build it. But it is built now, and we must make best use of our built environment. And that's why I suggest that, in fact, we should actually campaign to actually keep it in existence. The only other thing that I would like to say is that, in fact, that that it was suggested, and Robin has also suggested, that in fact it may be useful to get in contact with the East Suffolk councillors in this area to actually make it aware and make it an issue for them to take it up as local representatives for Lowestoft. Thank you very much.
What happened then was Wendy asked a question, but they couldn't get very far with it because it's not a discussion section of the meeting. So the only input the members of the public had was at the beginning, and that's it. They can make their comments, but then the councillors discuss it a little bit further on in the agenda. So we had to stop it there. I rather got the impression that those two people thought they got a bit of short shift, really. And to be fair, I mean, yeah, they probably did within the rules, but basically, here's your 3 minutes, do your stuff, then clear off. That was the sort of the inference drawn. Bit of a shame, but it's just not practical to actually do that sort of thing in these meetings. Right, then we moved on to a new item, the precept. The precept, as most people probably know, is basically the money that the council get from us members of the public. I mean, we pay it to one authority, and then that authority gives some of the money to Lowestoft Town Council to look after the Lowestoft area. So if you think about it, it's it is a sort of tax. It's fairly modest. Lots of people seem to get very confused about this because basically the idea is they're voting for it to go up by about 13%. And some people agree with that, some people don't. And some people have got some very unusual ways of trying to recover the money.
Put aside your prejudices about, or if you have absolute other interests, be very, very careful. You're looking at Lowestoft Town Council this evening and not speaking as what might benefit you as a district or a county councillor.
Councillor Parker.
Yeah, 13% is a substantial rise to the Lowestoft Town Council precept. Therefore, is it possible to actually reduce the rise by delaying some of the non-essential works, such as the toilet and the play park renewals, for this coming financial year, until the financial conditions improve?
I'm surprised anybody had the nerve to say that. So really, what should we do? Let's not put it up by 13%. let's actually not worry about upgrading the toilets and the playground, you know, the things that people really like and use. To anybody who ever says anything about toilets, I've always got the same answer. Have you never been caught short? Because if it happens to you in Lowestoft, you're stuffed. Because there's so few toilets anyway. So the idea that, you know, yeah, we might have to sort of close a few toilets. Oh dear, you know, people don't use them. They get vandalised. It's very short-sighted, I reckon.
The main issue is that we are not just budgeting for running costs. We never have been. When we were created out of and formerly unparished area in 2017, we were handed a portfolio of somewhere between 40 and 50 named assets. But some of those larger assets, like the parks, have individual buildings and so on that are assets in their own right. They were in various stages of condition, but many of them were at or approaching end of life, and therefore every budget we have declared since then has been a combination of capital replenishment and running costs. That is likely to remain unchanged for the next few years at least, probably the best part of the next decade, quite frankly. So if we are going to push so-called non-essential work like toilets and play areas further down the road until the financial conditions improve, without any guarantee that the financial conditions will improve, the danger is that we just move the problem into another year and that we will end up with a logjam. Because what we are trying to do by doing the assets at 3, 4, 5 a year is to try and spread the load so that we don't have to close assets on public safety grounds with consequent loss of immunity for the public. So the priority which is chosen to do those is not arbitrary, and it's not based on personal likes. It's driven by the condition and life expectancy of the assets. Currently, the town council bill for the parish, the bill per household is currently just over £123 a year, and for Band D at £160 a year. So any increase on that, even a modest increase, is going to appear quite large when expressed in percentage terms. So just to put it into perspective, a 13% increase on Band B is £16.22 per household per year, or £1.35 a month per household. And for Band D, £20.86 per household a year, or £1.74 per household. That's the reality in pounds and pence.
So for my house, 20 quid a year it's going to go up. And there's two of us, a tenner each. Why are people getting so upset?
Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. This is my first year on the council, and therefore I'm not party to what decisions were made before. I have read the papers on this. I haven't read all of the papers on everything, but I have read this paper. I think I fully take the point that about the percentage and the actual amount that it is. However, that lovely phrase optics, the optics of this give me some concern of how it may be reported, and I will therefore be reluctant to support a full amount of this proposed increase. Thank you.
Councillor Patience.
I can see his point. Now comes Councillor Patience, my first experience of Councillor Patience, with his in-depth knowledge of committee meeting procedures. And sadly, his knowledge of the committee procedures is probably better than his knowledge of the subject he's talking about. But there we go.
Just a query for starters. We're now talking, this is now a motion, am I correct?
Nobody's made a proposal.
Yes,
Well,
Did you make?
Councillor over there proposed that, Andy seconded it.
Yeah.
I just take it that is a proposal.
That is a
Therefore,
proposal.
standing orders should now take place with 3 minutes per.
That's what we're doing, yeah.
Trying
to.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to.
My question really, I've looked at this. Band A is now going up by £120.82 a year. Well, these are the figures I got off my computer.
That's not the increase, that's the new total.
Well, that's still £120. Whatever way you turn it round, my residents have got to find £125 a year to cover the previous, and that equates to £10.07 a month.
Totally misunderstood what everybody's been talking about. It hasn't gone up by that much money at all. As we said, my own particular one is going to go up by 20 quid. I don't mind 20 quid, that's fine. He's making it out as if it's a huge amount of money that it's going up. And clearly, that's completely wrong.
So what I'm suggesting is we go back to Budget and Loan Committee and have a look at where we can shave some stuff. One thing, and that's very controversial, in my eyes, that would be controversial. Why do we have to be spending all this money on the marina organisation? Several £1,000s per year. What do we get out of that? I don't see anything returns from the funding coming in from the marina. That's just one thing. But I'm taking to my two colleagues into consideration. I will not be supporting this.
In one of the bits earlier on, Andy actually explained to everybody that when Lowestoft Town Council came into existence, it was given loads of stuff to look after, and lots of things like the parks and the buildings on them were in a bit of a dodgy state. And part of the deal is when you take the ownership of something is you've got to do the upkeep. Now, I don't suppose Lowestoft Town Council really want to have the marina in their portfolio, but basically they own the place. It's a theatre, and one thing I do know about is theatres, and they cost a lot of money. Some of them will make a profit, quite a lot of them don't, but they own it. So what a silly thing to say, why are we putting money into it? Because you have to, because it's yours. For goodness sake, if the roof fell in, they'd have to put a new roof on it. It's just tough. You own it. I've not had an experience of councillor patience, but already my patience has gone. I think he's just talking complete and utter rubbish off the top of his head. And he does it in that quaint way that makes people think, oh, what a jolly chap. But he's just talking complete rubbish.
Okay, so we've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. Councillor Brooks, you've already spoken on this. No, we've had a proposal, it's been seconded.
Sorry, with respect, she can speak again because she proposed that she's allowed another go.
Here we go. Councillor Patience, with his extensive knowledge of committee procedure. She's entitled to another go. Indeed she is. And she does.
No, I'm not. I like to try to do things fairly. And Wendy?
Go on then.
Microphone off.
Well,
I want to pick up a couple of things.
Can you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I want to pick up a couple of things. Firstly, John's comment about how it will be perceived. I don't think we do things because of how they will be perceived. I think we do things because they are the right thing for this town. How the Lowestoft Journal chooses to pick it up, we have very little control over. However, we do have control over our own communications. And I also hope people have looked at Michael's proposed council tax leaflet, which has the information in there about where the money is going. Keith is completely wrong to suggest that people were being asked for £120. People are being asked for people are already paying a certain, it's not like they paid nothing and suddenly they're paying something. The increase over the year is, I can't remember off the top of my head. I know it's very small. It really is. It's like £1.60, £1.30 a month. It's very, very small. I think to get bogged down in the world of journalism and worried about how this will be perceived, it's up to us to convince people that actually the increase is modest and it will allow us to carry on the very, very good work we've been doing. Also, to come back to Keith. Keith is, like all of us, I think Keith is even on the Budget and Loan Committee, but has never turned up to a meeting yet. So to start at this stage criticising us supporting the marina seems a bit odd. I think he's also on the marina or on the
attack other people's views.
No, it's true. I mean, you cannot
talk about
come here. I will make that comment.
I'm going to stop you there, Councillor Brooks.
However, I urge people to vote for this. It's very modest, and it means the town council can carry on doing their work.
Can I just respond to Wendy's problem with me not turning up at Budget and Loan? For the past 21 days, I've had to sit day and night with my wife. My wife, I found unconscious. So therefore, my priorities are with my wife, not this town council or even any other council.
Thank
So
you.
please bear that in mind. Get your facts right first, please.
In
Right,
all
stop it,
honesty,
stop
I
it
was
now,
totally
stop.
unaware of that. And
Councillor Brooks,
Councillor
Brooks,
Patience is just.
Councillor Brooks.
Can I also call for a recorded vote on this, please?
Yes.
Before the vote is taken.
And another bit of procedure that we don't see very often is the request for a recorded vote. Now, normally, in a meeting, they'll just say 5 in favour, 1 against, 1 is abstaining. And that's all that's recorded. In this particular case, Councillor Patience wants a recorded vote, which means that each individual member's vote will actually be tabulated so that we can see in the records who voted and who voted against. So that's interesting. I've not come across that one for quite a long time. But clearly he's not very happy, so he's asked for it. Which means then that we have to start naming names as to who put their hands up. And if you watch the next bit to the end, you'll find he forgets to put his own hand up.
Do we need to vote on that, or does that just okay?
No, recorded vote has to be requested before the vote, but that's fine. We just need to make sure.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure there's a very clear show of hands so we can take the recorded vote. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we have a proposal to accept the 13% increase, seconded by Councillor Pearce. All in favour, please show.
Right, okay, so we have voting in favour of that, Councillor Youngman, Councillor Ray, Councillor Uppensberger, Councillor Pitts, Councillor Pearce. I can't see
Councillor
Councillor
Page.
Patient, but I
Yeah.
presume it's a
Yeah.
no. Councillor Page. Coming down the other side, Councillor Brooks, Councillor Breakspear, Councillor Blowers, Councillor Barker. Thank you. How many?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, against?
Against? Oh, abstain. You haven't voted, Councillor Patience and Councillor Parker.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I'll get straight
Can
back. Go
I?
ahead.
Sorry.
Have you
Can
got-
you not hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
against 2, Councillor Patience and Councillor Parker.
Abstentions.
Abstentions. Councillor
Murray,
Murray, Councillor Jones, and
Councillor
myself.
Begum. Do you get that to the right number?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's passed.
Time has passed. In actual fact, it's 3 days now since I started editing this video, and council events have sort of rolled on quite rapidly. So there's a few things for another video that'll have to come after this one, because the end of this meeting started something off that's sort of snowballed a bit. But I've got to go backwards in time, back to where we were just a few minutes ago, when a little bit of awkwardness appears. Now, remember what we said about all the councillors, and at the beginning of the meetings, they have to declare any interests, including the pecuniary interests, which are the ones where there's money, goods, benefits in kind, if you're asked to do things, and you get paid. Now, of course, Lowestoft Town councillors do it for love. That's the one thing I do like about Lowestoft Town Council, is that none of the people we see at these meetings get paid. They get their expenses covered, which is only fair, but they don't get paid for doing it, unlike other councils. And some of the councillors on our council are also on the other councils. So this is about to get a little bit tricky. Watch what happens next.
216.2a to consider making representations to the relevant authority on the planned demolition of St. Peter's Port. Councillor Brooks.
Yes, I think we have raised some questions that we'd like answered. And I know that the person who came tonight and spoke about it, they have received a lot of kind of redacted and refusal of their freedom of information. I think we have to ask questions on economics, justification for what they've done, and the climate issues.
Interests be declared and district councillors leave the meeting,
Yes, they
please.
should.
I
Yeah.
just wrote that.
Hello?
They should leave. Yes.
Well, I was going to, until I read the rules, you have to write in for a dispensation. I was going to ask for a verbal dispensation on this
No, they have to be
because
requested.
it's in my ward. And I'm representative of lots of town council in the ward that St Peter's Court is.
Apparently dispensations have to be pre-requested. Yeah.
I didn't know until this afternoon.
It's always on the
At
agenda.
the top, it's on the top of the
Yeah.
minutes. It's on the top of the minutes.
Agenda.
The agenda, yeah.
Always.
Sorry, the
Same.
agenda, yeah.
So they have to be written
Yeah.
written requests. So
Only the fact that I've dealt with it for the last 30 odd years. So it probably has a lot of Wendy Brooks.
It's also got a pecuniary interest because he gets paid to visit.
it's a pecuniary interest. So we'd have to ask you and Councillor Parker to leave.
They have to leave the room.
Yeah.
Because they're not fit.
I've just said that. Yeah. I've just said that. Yeah. So if I could ask the East Suffolk Council councillors to leave the room, please.
Well, he really didn't want to go, did he? Can you leave the room? Well, I was going to put in an application for a verbal dispensation to stay. Well, you didn't. And it's actually on the top of the agenda. So his knowledge of the rules is fine when they benefit him. And when they don't benefit him, as in he wants to stay and listen to what's going on, he sort of tries to bend the rules a little bit. Crafty chap. Anyway, he didn't manage it. I noticed our other East Suffolk councillor didn't make any fuss at all. He just said, yeah, okay. Graham was quite happy to do the proper thing. Unfortunately, the other one didn't want to do it. So I've made a little note in here. Knows the rules, prepared to bend them. Anyway, let's carry on.
The comments that we've heard from the public tonight match fairly closely some of the concerns that this council raised previously and forwarded to East Suffolk Council, or asked to be forwarded to East Suffolk Council. So in a way, there's a synergy between, or at least partial synergy between what we as a council have said and what members of the public have said. And I'm possibly not the only person to have received a request from members of the public with a suggestion that we further lobby the East Suffolk Council to defer the demolition of the building. And that would seem to be a reasonable thing to do in the circumstances of the concerns that have been raised. As was pointed out when we discussed it previously, having declared a climate emergency, it seems odd to just ignore the fact that there will be a huge environmental cost to this, irrespective of the financial cost, which is in the balance anyway. The area of concern I do have about the building, and I understand that building regulations don't get their own knickers in a twist about this, but I am concerned about the building only having one fire escape, having a great deal of interest in what happened at Grenfell. And irrespective of the fact that various experts say, oh, it's not a problem, or it's under the current regulations, it's only coming in then and all the rest of it. I do have a problem with a tall building with only one fire escape. Having said that, I support the idea and would propose that the wording that some of us have received by email forms the basis of a further delegation.
Councillor Murray, are you declaring that you've been lobbied? All councillors should declare if they've been lobbied, please.
Uh-oh, the alarm bell's gone off. He's just said that he's been lobbied. Basically, the two people who spoke at the beginning of the meeting, one of them has circulated an email around to all the councillors, and that's not allowed. They're supposed to actually, in that beginning bit, they're supposed to actually say that they've been lobbied, and they didn't. And this poor councillor is the one that sort of like just owned up to it. And it seems that they've all been lobbied, so they've all accidentally forgot to declare that they've been lobbied. Oh dear.
I'm guilty as charged. Well, I've received an email. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we all have, though, from Robin.
Well, are we talking about the email that was circulated to all councillors? Because
If it was
but John-
circulated from the office,
Yeah.
that's part of normal meeting procedure. If you've had an email directly from the member of the public, You have been lobbied and it should have been declared.
Then I think we've all got to declare.
Doesn't matter. I mean, you can declare it. Doesn't
Okay.
take you talking.
Okay.
won't it?
Well, I declare I have. Guilty as charged.
I also declare I have.
I think,
I think everyone.
Not mass.
Yes. Yeah.
And if to round off what I'm suggesting or proposing is that there is a suggestion in the lobbying what I have received that says along the lines of what does it say? It says that we should seek a deferral of the demolition activity from East Suffolk Council until, in effect, further information is collected.
I must admit, I got a bit confused here because the purpose of the lobbying was that the councillors then approach East Suffolk Council and try to defer the knocking down of St Peter's Court. But as I understand it, and it's mentioned a bit later on in this meeting, the deadline for that has passed quite a while ago. So it's a bit pointless, really. The building is scheduled for demolition. The time to complain about it was before Christmas, and it's going ahead as far as I can see.
The demolition notice went through planning, our planning committee, which is a statutory consultee body and not a primary planning body. And we had proposed a holding objection, which I think is what Taylor was referring to, on the basis that we wanted further information, certainly in regard to environmental and also other considerations. So regardless of this email, our own internal planning committee had already asked for a holding objection to request further information so that it could make a considered decision on whether to support or oppose the demolition notice. And we had already done that before we were approached by any member of the public. So I would like to make that clear in terms of the timeline.
Permission was granted for demolition on the 10th of January, did you say? Yeah. Councillor Ray?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the climate emergency issues here. Several professional organisations, including engineers, architects, developers, state that from a climate emergency perspective, buildings are refurbished rather than demolished due to the carbon embedded within the buildings. As East Suffolk Council have declared a climate emergency, they should seriously take this into account.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks?
We don't get Wendy's response because sadly her microphone was on and she turned it off. So we missed her complete response. We haven't got that. But we have got the comment about, it would be better if it's refurbished. And as I mentioned before, refurbishment is merely a timeline sticking plaster. It doesn't actually solve anything at all because at some point that building has got to be knocked down. Doesn't matter whether it's this year or in 20 years' time. That carbon is going to release. Can't do anything about it. It's a done deal. It just hasn't happened yet. So it's a bit tricky. There's probably not too much point following the rest of the meeting because it went over a few things, didn't really do any new ground, and we're still left with this problem. People want to stop East Suffolk Council knocking down St Peter's Court, which they appear to have done all the paperwork for, and it's ready to go. I happen to think knocking it down is a good idea. Others, of course, disagree, and that's perfectly okay. That's where today's video is going to end. St Peter's Court zooms on. We've got the report to come on the Holocaust Memorial Day. That's going to come. And we've got a rather tricky planning application to talk about. An HMO for quite a number of people in an area where clearly, from what's going on at the moment, nobody wants it. Can they stop it? Well, time will tell, but that'll be for another video. Look after yourselves. Take care.